Today, in fact, I will be reviewing a bottle that was provided to me by Kyle at No Hype Reviews. Um, I think I drunkenly sent some bottles Kyle's way in the past. I think there was Night and Day and maybe some other bullshit. I'm not sure. Again, because I'm usually pretty drunk when I'm on Nerd Sense. But, when he came to town, I think just this past spring, he was nice enough to, schlep some bottles from New York. I think that's where he's out of. For us, and me particularly. So I got to go home with a few bottles, courtesy of Kyle. And here we are, almost 6, whatever months later. I haven't cracked any of them. So Sean at Nerd Sense is constantly harassing me and everybody else in our little group chat about producing content and all this other stuff. He wants us recording ourselves for some fucking sick reason. I don't know. It's a whole thing for him. And I'm currently unemployed and looking for things to kind of fill my day. So I figured, why not? Kyle did a nice thing for me. He's a beer tuber. I know Kyle through Sean. He tries to beer tube. I'm not sure if he's successful in that or not. You guys let me know in the comments what you think of Sean's performances. Mike's always a fucking gem. When Josh is on there. Mwah. And then obviously when yours truly kind of jumps on there, it's exquisite. But enough about that. The bottle I'm going to be doing today, as I said, is courtesy of No Hype Kyle. Brewery Ommegang, Gnomegang, or Gnomegang. It's a barrel-aged Gnomegang ale. I'm going to say Gnomegang. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm making this video, not you. It's a blonde ale aged in barrels. Very descriptive. On the bottle, I'm not seeing a ABV anywhere. I did read somewhere that it was around 9%, which is pretty heavy for a blonde. Belgian blonde are typically, 5 to 7, generally what I've seen. Where heaven met earth and stayed a while. Jesus Christ. Okay. It says serve at 40 degrees. Me, Nerd Sense guys can attest to this. I drink bottles in cans a little warmer than usual, than recommended. Pretty much because I'm a bad motherfucker and I do whatever the hell I want. So, Alchemist has been trying to get me to drink from the can for years. It hasn't worked yet. But either way, I'm very excited to get into this one because I do love blonde ales. And the concept of having a barrel-aged one, I can't remember off the top of my head if I've ever actually had a barrel-aged blonde. But these guys who are allowed to make the Game of Thrones beer, I feel like they're the appropriate bunch to take on such tasks. So, oh yeah. Getting a lot of the yeast character right off the cork. Love cage cork bottles. Just love that. Especially, bottle conditioned stuff where you've kind of got this nice little pop like you're opening some Moet Chandon or something like that. It's kind of like a celebration, every time you uncage and uncork a bottle like this. It's definitely like the old world style that's kind of lost in some of the new world breweries, but it's great when, a kind of traditional style brewery carries that over for later generations. So let's take a look at this bad boy. I got my Mystic glass. Here we are. And I'm pretty sure I handled this bottle carefully, but you can see a pretty good amount of floaties kicking around in there. Or maybe you can't, I don't know. I'm recording this with myself and I was too lazy to set up all my cameras. But there is a good amount of sediment, things like that kicking around. The head poured pretty strong, and that's kind of died off a little bit. Probably a quarter of my finger of head still remaining. But it's persistent, it's definitely hanging around there. It's fairly effervescent too, lots of bubbles being produced, definitely adds to the appearance of it. So I'm getting kind of a translucent copper. Even at the bottom of the Tiku here, it is still, showing the same shade all the way through to the top. Again, you get that nice white head, that contrast, which is, if you ever see me review a beer, it's one of my favorite characteristics of a good beer is nice white head and a contrasting, color of the rest of the liquid. I'm gonna get a nose here. Okay, getting an incredible amount of barrel and a good amount of vanilla, which I'm guessing is a result of that barreling as well. Vanilla is not something I generally get out of a Belgian blonde ale. Generally, it's kind of like a sweet, malty character, a little on the lighter side, fairly lagerish, where it's, you know, it's pretty light-bodied and stuff like that. But there's good, again, the good amount of effervescence of this is really helping kind of throw up a lot of characters at it too. So I am getting kind of that bready, malty, backbone here. And again, it doesn't really look like a blonde, but could be, again, a characteristic of the barreling. So, I don't know, not exactly what I expected, but I'm definitely not hating what I'm seeing. It looks great. So, and the nose character is, it's definitely, it's got like a come hither thing going on here. Yeah, so the big takeaways on the nose, on the aroma, the bouquet, are the barreling and the vanilla, which I assume will also be from the barreling. I don't think there's any adjuncts. Really no hops, bittering, or aromatic. Again, just a lot of malty characteristics. So big takeaways on the nose. It's very, very, very pleasant though. So let's go ahead and get our first whack at this. So I'm not really getting a typical blonde ale palate here. Again, completely due to the barreling. I'm quite sure of this at this point. What I am getting is rum characteristic more than any bourbon or any other type of whiskeys, American or otherwise. There's a good amount of, the barreling flavor, as far as like alcohol and booze goes, but it's not overpowering. It actually is incredibly balanced with the vanilla, the malt characteristics that coming through, and then just the traditional barreling stuff. Here I'm getting rum mostly. I'm actually getting a weird amount of coconut and coffee too, for some reason. Those are the first two descriptors that come to my mind. Relatable flavor profiles that are coming through. And now I'm kind of wondering if the sediment is kind of contributing to the flavors that I'm picking up as well. But they're completely unnoticeable as far as the mouthfeel in the body goes. I'm not getting any grittiness or anything like that anywhere in my mouth, which is, I was worried about that for a second when I saw the pour and it looked like a goddamn fucking snow globe. But, fortunately that stuff is, it's not noticeable whatsoever. And, frankly, it's kind of nice to look at too. And the effervescence is really not allowing it to settle at any kind of like particular advanced rate. It's kind of hanging around. The bubbles keep it, tossing up a little bit. The head is, almost completely dissipated. Something you're going to get from a barreled, ale of any sort, really. It's not the best thing for head retention. But it definitely, the way the lacing's showing up in the glass is pretty nice. Although it doesn't really hang around much. Yeah, I'm really not getting a lot from this beer. It's not giving me as much as I would have expected from it. Maybe I should have lowered the bar a little bit, considering it is a barrel-aged blonde. It's not a style I'm super familiar with, so I'm not necessarily keyed in on what I should be looking for. But as a kind of naked observer, it's not throwing anything crazy at me. So I must say I do enjoy it. It's a pretty quick finish. It's not necessarily dry, although it does have kind of like a drying characteristic. But it's not what I would call an all the way dry, finish. This is a completely perplexing beer. Again, it reminds me kind of Day and Night from Trillium, which is a blonde barley wine style ale with coffee. It actually pours just like this color. And it gives like kind of a weird vanilla, with coffee kind of characteristic to it. Certainly not hating it. Not crazy about it. And I really wish they would put the ABV on the bottle. How hard is that shit? Like somewhere on here. It says like a serving temperature. Just pour slowly as not to disturb the yeast sediment. I think that was disturbed when I uncaged it. And the effervescence kind of threw it all up. I'm going to take it back here. This beer is great if you really, really, really want to know the effects of barreling on a beer. And I'm not sure if that objectively was their goal, but it's certainly what they've accomplished here, because really all I'm getting out of this is a barrel. Other than your boilerplate, malt characteristics associated with blonde, this is like pure barrel. This might be the pure barrel experience. This might be the beer that I remember having discussions on Nerd Sense about effects of barreling on certain beers. We see them with, stouts and kind of heavier beers like that. But barreling a blonde, they might be onto something here. That might be the best experience. I hope they do a whole series of this where we can kind of go through the spectrum of different barrels available. Like, again, you've got your bourbons, your ryes, rum, your darker wine casks, like I said, the Cab Sauves, the Pinot Noirs, stuff like that. It'd be really kind of cool to see with a nice, simple, and simple is not the word to describe a blonde. Blondes are not simple. They're complex in their own respect. But as far as, I guess the word would be, a cleaner baseline. It seems like more of a style of beer where you can kind of add like the slightest something to it, and it would kind of throw off the entire flavor profile, and it would just kind of absorb and soak up whatever you put into it. Perfect example, Treehouse's Eureka, my favorite in particular, Eureka with Citra. Mike over at Nerd Sense, same deal, holla at your boy. That's a perfect example of a beer that, if they just kind of released the blonde by itself, which they may have, I've never had regular Eureka, but I've had other variants of Eureka other than the Citra. And it's just, it's such a great, canvas to display what Citra provides. And this might be exactly what they were doing with the barreling by throwing a blonde in there. You kind of get to see a real clear picture of what barreling can do for a beer. And I don't know. I'm kind of eating crow right now because I was kind of about to shit on this beer a little bit, but there hasn't been a beer that I've just kind of gotten like the pure barrel experience, and that might be what we're getting here. What are you gonna do? I'm not a psychologist. I'm Reid. I'm representing Nerd Sense here in my Gorilla